And now I'm hitting that. So the folks that couldn't make it, they have a chance to listen in, since this time we're coming across all types of time zones. Thanks, Cecile. So Round Sky is like I said, a worker-owned cooperative that works with leaders and, like many perhaps of you on the call, that value inclusion and participation in their teams, who are seeking to improve their democratic and collaborative processes and hone in on that leadership potential. And we do that through our courses, our coaching, and team or company-based trainings, grounded in our collaborative operating system and processes, which we call CoLab. You'll hear more about that throughout this call. And some logistics, just so that you can ask questions. There's a chat box. I think some folks may have used it already, I see. And also, so you can chat to everyone, or you can chat to just certain people. So you do that by clicking the little chat bubble at the bottom, and then you can choose Round Sky, which is me, Rebecca, or you can choose anyone on here if you'd like to follow up with them after the call, you like what they're saying. So, and we'll take clarifying questions as needed throughout the call, and also at the end, we'll have a big time for Q&A. So just feel free to, if one pops up in your mind, feel free to chat it over. And that is about it for logistics. So now that we have that, I want to give us space to get to know who's on the call. And I'm gonna start off with myself personally, and then each of you can share in the chat box as well as we keep going. Introduce yourselves and say hello to each other. So, and this is just a little prompt if you'd like that. So I'm Rebecca. I'm the communications wizard here at Round Sky, and I've been working with these folks for 2 years now. And what brought me to this work is, like maybe many of you, the importance of process and structure to get us where we want to be, and to hold us as we get into more the harder moments. And then I started working at Round Sky because I wanted to enter the worker co-op movement to gain a better understanding for myself of what economic justice looks like, as I come from a fragmented class background. And I currently live and have been in New Orleans for 5 years. I'm originally from California, and outside of Round Sky, I know many people on the call also support social causes and anti-oppression work. And so my passions outside of work are anti-racist organizing with a collective here in New Orleans. I play volleyball, and I try to make time for dancing. And so I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation today, because collaborative leadership has come up in so many contexts of my life. And I'm sure that you can relate when it's not working. It can be really uncomfortable and overwhelming to figure out how to move forward. So I've definitely experienced that with some of the teams I've been a part of. And I want to pass it on to Cecile so that she can introduce herself to you all. She's one of our instructors at Round Sky. So go ahead, Cecile.
Thank you, Rebecca. And welcome, everyone. I'm Cecile, one of the co-founders of Round Sky Solutions, and I live near Montpelier, Vermont, in the heart of the beautiful Green Mountains. And like many of you, I'm a social entrepreneur and have been launching mission-driven enterprises for 30 years. At some point, I got really motivated by the waste of time, energy, and creativity that poor collaborative leadership represented, and was inspired to take up a deep dive into organizational and individual development in search of an answer. In particular, I was curious what power is, and developed some theories about power to map or explain the dynamics I commonly saw in organizations, including the constant barrage of overwhelming demands on our time. So I synthesized the research into collaborative leadership I'd been doing and created a map of what organizations are already talking about and need to communicate about, and a set of processes called CoLab that reliably deliver healthy forms of power in action, including much more fun and engaging ways of managing the overwhelm. I published Collaboration That Works, a ruthlessly practical handbook for a generative world, as a training manual that summarizes this research and introduces CoLab for organizations.
Nice. Thanks, Cecile. Thanks for being here. And so then I also want to introduce Charlotte, who is an associate here at Round Sky, and also has gone through the level 1 and level 2 program. Do you want to introduce yourself, Charlotte?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte. I'm a member of the Round Sky Solutions Co-op and also a couple other organizations where I utilize this collaborative leadership skill set. Located in Vermont as well, in Heinsberg, Vermont, which is sort of just southeast of Burlington. And I'm here today just to observe the call, get to know you all, and hopefully share the experience.
Thanks, Charlotte. Your video, it seems like all the tech is doing funny things. There's funny scribbles happening on my screen, and I don't know why. But Charlotte, your video, the audio was a little cut, wasn't working so well, so maybe turning off video might help. But welcome. I think we got the gist of it. Yeah, bummer. Okay. So there's some people that have been introducing themselves on the chat box here. So we have Jess from the Director of Addison County Humane Society, also in Vermont. Welcome. Nice to have you here. Erica is here from, let's see, from the Maine Farmland Trust, a land trust in Maine that works to protect farmland, support farmers, and advance the future of farming in Maine. Welcome. So glad that you're here and that you heard about it from Noemi. She's wonderful. Glad that you have that connection. And we'll definitely cover some of the content in the course and show you a space where you can dive in more as you'd like as well. And Nenad is here. I'm sorry if I mispronounce anyone's name, from the Croatian Permaculture. Welcome. You have Permaculture Collab, so I'm sure there will be some strong connections there. And we have some other folks here. Keep introducing yourself, your name, your organization if that's relevant, where you are in the world, and what brought you here. That's the part that I really want to know, is like what's bringing you here today for your time. So keep on doing that, and we'll continue on as you introduce yourselves. Pass it back to Cecile.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. It is truly a delight to be here with all of you from around the world. And I want to just talk a little bit about what we're going to go over today. First, we'll talk about the benefits and challenges of collaborative leadership and explore how our leadership program is supporting leaders like yourselves in achieving your leadership goals. And first, we'll look at why it's so important, including hearing from our former students. And you'll also hear how the course helped them with those particular challenges. We'll then take a few minutes together to offer you a mini lesson on bringing balance and flow to your life, followed by sharing the details of what we cover in the course, along with logistics and pricing and deadlines for your consideration. And we'll wrap up with an open Q&A, though we encourage you to post your questions in the chat box as we go along. All right, well, so let's begin with talking about getting workable collaborative leadership for ourselves and our teams. It can be really challenging, especially in this day and age with so many competing and complex demands. It could be that the workload in your teams is uneven, or perhaps there's really important details being dropped. Maybe it's unclear who is doing what on your team, and that's creating frustration and conflict. Or maybe you have or are a founder that knows that they want to share power and is either ready to retire or doesn't know how to transition their leadership to others. I'd like to start with, this question of why collaborative leadership as a form of leadership is so important by asking Charlotte, in particular, what happened in your team? What was going on for you when you realized that developing your collaborative leadership would make a difference in your life? So let's hear from you first, Charlotte.
Yeah, thanks, Cecile. I think one of the most important and crucial things that brought me to the realization that some training in collaborative leadership was important. My commitment to collaborative leadership is long-standing, but what's striking is that we don't have models for this in our lexicon in the modern age. We have very hierarchical knowledge of leadership, and that's that goes really deep. And so for me, it became important to be able to embody a new way and to learn, just really embody this new vocabulary of collaborative leadership. And you can read, I did read about it and talk about it, but it's different when you're in a learning environment and when you're surrounded by professionals who can embody this for you, and you get a chance to practice it. So that just realization that we don't have good models around us necessarily to learn from, and it's really important, especially as we're being such revolutionary leaders, to be able to embody that well and be able to handle the vocabulary for collaborative leadership. So that's why I came to this training initially years ago now.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. And Rebecca, I'd love to hear from you as well as a graduate of the CLCP1.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. And we also have Jan that's having trouble logging in, one of our current level 2 students. So we'll come back to her. Like I said, the tech issues are just flying through. So thanks for being here with us, everyone. So for me, I completed our level 1 training and at the end of 2017, so almost about 9 months now that it's been. And part of it for me is that entering Round Sky's work was just such a different place than I had been. I had been coming from a nonprofit that was full of just amazing people, but the management was so hard to work in. My boss at the time had, we would go out for wine, all of us would after work, but during work he just went from the fly of his shirt, just whatever he wanted to do that day was what we did. So calling people for hours to ask them to donate to us was one idea that just demoralized all of us. So I think there's just this thing about, so when I entered Round Sky and after doing this training, I have a better understanding of why, but the sense that collaborative leadership is a fuller picture than just the day-to-day. It's how the whole team is held together without someone just deciding in that moment what to do. It's coming up against the challenges together in an innovative way. I think we would have been able to figure out fundraising if all of us really had a real meaningful say. That just didn't happen. So these tools, I found that in other tricky situations that I have a much better idea about how to include voices in a way that's not just everyone step up and tell me what you think, in a way that's really clear. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways for me. And I would like to invite all of you to share what kind of things are happening in your team that makes you realize collaborative leadership or cooperative management is important to you. Why put in the work to do this? I'd love to hear from you if you want to put in the chat box about what's going on in your team. Thanks, Cecile.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. And do let me know when Jan is on. Happy to wrap her in. But I also wanted to just sort of reflect from my own perspective. My journey through collaborative leadership really, started when I was in my 20s. There was a sort of a passionate intuition for the need for this, but it took me many decades to really realize what was in the way and why it really mattered. And some of the things that I've sort of top needs and pushes for getting better at this that I recognized in my time were that we can have embarrassing or expensive mistakes that can be common in teams that are experiencing challenges with their collaborative leadership. And for example, I worked with a catering business that would frequently face having forgotten items upon their arrival at their delivery site. And it was a small example, but this of course costs the business money and credibility. So small and big things can be missed in teams, and it can be expensive and demoralizing and damaging to relationships at work. And we as leaders in our teams and cooperatives really need to have the skills to be able to see the bigger picture for our often under-resourced teams so that we aren't missing these key opportunities for our success. Another common challenge I saw was an invisibility of work and often an unequal work distribution across the organization. So it can be common for people to not feel appreciated for their work, and at the same time, there can be people who actively try to hide or get away with doing as little as possible. Have you ever felt unappreciated or unseen? I certainly have, and it's really common. One nonprofit that I consulted with was surprised to find that a key worker in the organization was doing a tremendous amount of work that only one other person really had a clue about. And discovering this not only enabled the team to more equitably redistribute the work, but it also helped that individual in question feel seen and appreciated. And if you're seeing this in your team or experiencing this, the CLCP, our Collaborative Leadership Certification Program, offers some key tools and ways to approach this challenge as a leader sharing the responsibility with others. And this really leads me to the next challenge of burnout and resentment. When you have some people who work hard and get more done than others, they can end up being given more work because they're capable. In other words, their ability to perform becomes a detriment to them. In the current reality of our world and cultural busyness, we really need tools to prevent burnout and actively nurture each other. So, I would love to sort of turn this question around for Charlotte and Rebecca and Jan, if she's on, to ask, how has your opportunity to take the Level 1 Collaborative Leadership Certification Program helped you? What's been most powerful about the course? How has it changed your leadership and how you've grown so far? And let's go with Charlotte first.
Yeah, thanks, Cecile. Oh my gosh, so the CLCP1 for me, I mean, one of the most impactful pieces of the CLCP1 was just getting a set of meeting practices that I can use with any team, but obviously mostly with collaborative teams, and being able to practice those meeting practices and understand how important each piece is to bringing a full picture of what's happening in the organization to the team that you're working with. Each piece of the meeting practices has so much meaning, and then if you are just reading about it in a book, for example, you wouldn't get the sense of the ability to facilitate and draw out all the key information from the team that really needs to be shared at each meeting. So for me, the meeting practices was the most fundamental piece, and just being able to facilitate those and participate in those through the training.
Thank you, Charlotte. And I think Jan's on now. So Jan, if you want to jump in and answer that question, that'd be lovely.
Sure. The team that I'm working with is already very, very determined to collaborate and have everyone's equal voice heard. And it's a nonprofit, and they have a vast purpose that really energizes them, and they like to do a lot of talking. And the greatest result from putting collabs practices in with this team was our ability to separate out the various conversations and look to see, okay, this is a conversation that specifically is intended to do this, and it has an output. So we had a whole lot more action coming out of our conversations. They were, all of the practices are really oriented toward what are you going to do, and how are you going to capture that, and who's going to be accountable for that. And so it's, a lot more work gets done. And I think that the conversations are way more productive because they are oriented toward that intent to fulfill our purpose by getting the work done.
Thanks, Jan. Yeah, that's lovely. It's certainly part of my experience as well. It's so much more effective and efficient and frankly pleasurable to converse and work together. And how about for you, Rebecca?
Yeah, what Jan and Charlotte said definitely resonate with me. This really tangible sense of working through real life problems in the course was helpful for me. And what I've been thinking about is kind of less of the tangible things are super helpful and they're great to lean on, but something that I really got out of it was this ability to create a space where I'm able to listen and where people feel that and they want to share more. So it's like, it's more than just active listening. It's creating a space where listening is like a dual process. I don't know if that makes sense, but, and then with that, it's also honing in on what people are really articulating that they need. Sometimes people don't say exactly the thing that they need. It's said in different ways based on what their experience and how they communicate. So it's really having this new skill around better listening around what people need. And especially in collaborative leadership, as we're being inclusive and navigating so many different perspectives, it's such an important skill that I think is hard to practice sometimes. So I really got that out of the program through the somatic project and through my own personal development topics. I think that was huge. And then I've also realized that it's helped me to better understand what my team needs here at Round Sky and in other teams as well to get through the challenges. And also even in my personal relationships, it doesn't stick just to work. So that's kind of an interesting thing that I wasn't expecting.
Oh, yeah. Lovely. Thanks, Rebecca. And you really touch on one of the pieces for me that I found transformative about this work is the ability to have a clear and effective decision-making process so that we can wrap in all of those perspectives, right? And actually treat each of those differing perspectives as unique and precious and incredibly valuable, but not get stuck in endless discussing about them, to be able to surface those and integrate those rapidly and come to a decision and know that we've come to a decision and can move on. That was such a relief. It was also really helpful to be able to see when do we actually need to make a decision and when don't we need to make a decision. And being able to make that distinction I've seen so many teams just be able to speed up and move through their content together much more quickly with even just that simple distinction. So on that note, let's move into giving you all a little bit of a taste here on the call as to one of the topics that we go into in this course.
I have a question to feel.
Yes.
What do you think about giving Jan a moment to introduce herself, just to give some context for those since she missed the beginning?
That sounds great. Thank you.
That first question, I'll go back to it. So Jan, would you introduce yourself to the folks here, kind of?
Sure.
Yeah,
I do apologize for being late. It was a problem with the technology, I guess.
It is.
The gremlins. I'm in Boston. I'm a learning strategist and designer, developer, facilitator. I do corporate training, and right now I'm working freelance for several clients, including some nonprofits. And I'm really embedding CoLab into every project that I do. As soon as I initiate it, I get everybody started with a living agenda, and people are like, "Whoa, really? This is the way you work?" And it has streamlined a lot of initial discussions and moved us right into getting the project going. So that's me.
Nice. Welcome, Jan. So great to have you here. And one of the questions that we were talking about earlier before you jumped in was why is collaborative leadership important to you? And maybe if you want to call upon a specific example about what happened in your team or what was going on for you when you realized that developing your collaborative leadership, bringing these new tools in, would make a difference.
Is that a question you're directing at me?
Yes.
Yes. Really, I kind of covered it in what I was telling everyone about outcomes. But in addition, I feel like I've really gained insight into power dynamics. What many people know of, think of as group dynamics, really has to do with where's the power? Who's holding the power? Who's withholding power? Who is exercising power in an unhealthy way? Those kinds of questions I constantly work with and are constantly in my mind, because I feel like I'm getting better at analyzing the power dynamics, the group dynamics on the fly. And so I think that's one of the most important things about being a leader. A collaborative leader, not only gets that for themselves, but then they let the group in on it. And if it's a problem, everybody gets to help solve it.
Great point.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something about being a collaborative leader that comes out in just an introduction, like this is who I am. So thanks for making that connection. Like, I feel like I answered that. This is the introduction to myself. So great to have you here. And I will pass it back to Cecile to get into we haven't done this before, a special lesson around bringing balance and flow to your work.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. And so we know that many of today's leaders, myself included, I'm pretty sure all of us on this call, we just have too many things to do and not enough time. And I know I've ended up feeling burnt out or on the edge of it all. And I think we can all relate to having a never-ending task list. It can be quite overwhelming to meet all of the demands coming at us from so many angles. And on top of that, people on our teams are feeling this sense of overwhelm as well. And sometimes our teams simply don't know how to step up into leadership that's needed. So we completely understand how you're feeling in this place. And thus we're pairing this info call with a sneak peek of a highly useful tactic to help you find more balance in your life, to lessen that sense of overwhelm while achieving more of what really matters to you. And before we dive into this tactic, I want to point to why bringing a balance and flow to your work and life really matters, beyond perhaps the obvious reasons of feeling better. As socially conscious leaders aspiring to make significant change in our world that desperately needs it, we ourselves are essentially the instrument of change through which everything we say and do flows. And therefore, our capacity to be more effective with less time makes it possible for us to cover more territory with less stress. And perhaps even more importantly than that, our ability to have insight into what is important to say or do in any situation depends upon our capacity to tap our unique genius and offer that back to the world. Really, this unique genius of ours is stifled and silenced by stress of overwhelm. And the biggest point of leverage any of us has to bring about a better world, as Donella Meadows points out in this quote, is the ability that we have to change the way we and others think. And this really is the highest point of leverage, as she points to in her writing, Thinking in Systems. And it's most easily accessed by you when you are working in a state of balance and flow, from a place of coherence and being resourced. So as the instrument of change in your world, you have a tremendous opportunity to make bigger, better waves through the personal actions you take to reduce your overwhelm and stabilize in balance and flow for both yourself and your teams. Now, this topic is a big part of what you'll learn in the course, and there's a lot of different components to actually having this come together. We don't have time to get into in deeply, but I wanted to offer one of the key ways that you can create balance and curb some of that overwhelm for yourself. So we'd like to suggest that you try this following exercise to help transform your overwhelm into actual balance and flow. First of all, take a moment and step back and look at all of the teams you are on. Take some sticky notes and start writing down the name of one team or major project on each sticky note. And try to be as comprehensive as you can be. Now place those notes in a concentric circles around the center point of view. So have a sticky note that says me on the middle, have that in the middle. And the ones that are most important to you for whatever reason, you can then place in close proximity to you in a circle around you. The teams or projects that are less important should be farther away. And in order to account for differences between weekday and weekend time, you might choose to do one of these circles for weekends and one for weekdays. So for example, for myself, I spend most of my weekends working on my organic homestead, and so I prioritize all of the work during that time. And during weekdays, I'm working for Round Sky, and so those would be two different circles for me. So the point of this is that physically visualizing your time makes this process much easier to do. And once you've sort of settled on what these concentric circles look like, step back and put numbers on each sticky note for the amount of time approximately that each of your teams or projects, including your self-care needs like sleep and food, and then start adding that time up from the inside out. And when you reach 24 hours, I'm recommending you do this on a per 24 hours, how much time do each of these projects take? So that you can add up to 24 hours and notice once you do, where are you in your concentric map of sticky notes? What lies outside that boundary of 24 hours? What is inside? And take a moment to note how you feel about what you see at that point. And if it's unworkable, go through and exchange time on the inside for time that needs to be on the inside but isn't, until you reach a balance point that you can live with for now. And I think it's important to emphasize this idea of for now because it's best supported if you commit to redoing this exercise as soon as you start to feel overwhelmed again. And for any of the teams that lie outside of that 24-hour ring, take some time and go intentionally communicate your capacity to those teams. Let them know that you cannot deliver for now, perhaps in the future, but not for now. And so I'm sure you've heard of the advice to simply say no to things that you can't fit into your schedule. Many of us have been here, still are here. It's hard to disappoint others, especially when it's something you theoretically could help with or that you actually really care about. However, keep in mind that when you say yes to something that doesn't fit into your current commitments, you're actually saying no to your own ability to tap your unique genius and create change from a higher point of leverage. So your overcommitting really isn't serving anyone, and perhaps yourself most of all, in your ability to do the good work you want to do here. So hard as it is to do, here are some ways to soften the potential disappointment that you may have to share with some of your commitments. First of all, you can apologize and, most importantly, empathize. You can also help turn them on to this tool as well, because chances are they are also overcommitted. And, help them strategize around how to get their needs met. Maybe you have another person in mind who might be able to step up. Maybe you have an idea about how that team could reprioritize just like you are doing, so that they no longer actually need the work that you are doing. You might even find that the people you're communicating with are refreshed by your honesty and awareness of your time management, and take that to heart for themselves, and dig in a little bit to reprioritize. So as you focus on your commitments, you can move your sticky notes, the ones that fall outside that 24-hour boundary, into the recycling or into a spot on the sheet for backlogged projects. And it's important to note that sometimes this process of reducing your commitments can take months, even years. And, juggling your commitments around can really change how you relate to the variety of other projects that are important to you. So let me just give you an example. For example, if you decide it's no longer a priority for you to maintain a big house, getting out of that big house is going to take you some time. And so having patience with this process is also really important. And definitely not least, going forward, do not accept any new projects or commitments unless you've actually made room for them on the inside of that circle in a way that works for your other commitments. And you're going to get better at doing this with practice to give you that sense of balance and flow that you need to reduce your sense of overwhelm and to be able to tap your unique genius. So in order for this to work, this process to work over time, there's a couple of other really key ingredients. One is for you to establish an effective task tracking system for your whole life, including yourself. And you can start with just your work life to get the hang of it, but actually eventually tracking your whole life is really important. And this will enable you to nest all of your projects within the roles that you hold on your teams. It will also make it possible for you to know that you aren't dropping important items that you've committed to. And also for you to prioritize daily across your commitments so that you can allocate your time according to what is most important to you and say goodbye to that overwhelm. In order to do that, I suggest picking 5 target projects per week based on what your team has identified as your top priorities. Actually number them, and you'll be able to know, to skip second guessing if you should be working on this or not. It's a tremendous relief, actually. So this is a process that starts with you, but your teams also need to go through the same kind of process, especially for mission-driven organizations. The temptation to continue to take on projects is especially challenging. After all, we're here to help, and saying no to people that we could help is painful and confusing and can create a lot of stress and conflict between differing perspectives on a team. The truth of the matter is, though, that when we overcommit as an organization, we can end up under-delivering on the very projects that we've committed to, which can cause more harm than good for everyone that we're actually trying to help. So in this course, you'll get a sense of how to do that on an organizational level as well as on a personal level. So on that note, let's segue back to what are some of the projects that we cover in the course.
Yeah, that's a great practice, Cecile. Thank you. And I just want to say that I have trouble saying no to things. I'm definitely one of the overcommitters. And I think that coming back to what's important to me, what do I need to put my time in this month, is really helpful. I think that's a helpful practice that I've had, and separating those out in terms of work, life, other things. Like, it's helpful for me to kind of box those things up. Maybe that's helpful for you too. But the same exercise applies, and I think it's true that when we overcommit, we're really not serving anyone. Like, it's kind of a bummer to be around someone who's overwhelmed all the time. Like, you care about that person, but if they're overwhelmed all the time, it's really not serving anybody. We're not machines. So I just want to share that with all the people on this call. I think that I'm sure that many of you resonate with that sentiment. So I want to share some things with you all around what are we have 5 main learning activities in the level 1 course, and I'll go through each of them one by one just to give you a sense of what you might learn. And bear with me, my mouse is having kind of a mind of its own, which is very exciting to work with. Maybe my mouse is overwhelmed here. So the first project is the personal development topic, which I mentioned earlier, and that is a project where you'll be asked to come up with a personal development topic or an area of growth that will support your learning during the time of the training. So that's created by you and informed by a personal development practice that we've created in CoLab. And it's used to support all the things that you've been doing before now and continue to move you forward so that you can also repeat it later. So it's a really tangible and also just a really holistic project to keep your personal development moving so you don't get stuck and stagnant. And then the next one, kind of on the same, could be on the same wavelength, is the personal task tracking project. And as mentioned in our lesson, you'll be introduced to the tools you need for your personal time and task tracking management system. And it'll go much deeper into what we just talked about, like how do you actually do that, which we couldn't get into today, but the hows and all the nitty gritty details about maintaining that. And then also, upgrading whatever you're doing now. We're all here and we can all improve. So upgrading what's currently happening. And many of our participants have expressed feeling more focused on their work and more ease as they put in place this task tracking practice, and less overwhelm really, because it helps them bring in all these aspects of their leadership and make it flow better. So that's part of the goal of that project and what some folks have experienced afterward. And then to take that a little bit further, you'll be introduced to the purpose of our ops reports and task tracking for a collective. And so that you can use during your meetings possibly, or it's really a game changer in getting your team aligned. So if one person on your team has priorities here, another person on your team has priorities here, but what aligns you? How do you know who's doing what? It can really spread an organization thin to just have so many different priorities in all these different ways. So this tool and this practice really helps you align, so you're moving forward on your projects instead of inches in all these different directions. And so you'll take that practice and you'll get a chance to bring it back to your cohort and talk about what's working, what's not working, really get into those details. And then the next project, which really all of these are so interconnected. This is the Scopes and Roles project. And you'll practice forming roles and forming scopes, so areas of work. And this will help your team to have clarity across the board and give people real autonomy and leadership over the work. So not the delegation, you're taking it a step further where people are really owning their work, which feels so much better in a team, right? As collaborative leaders, we don't really want to be told what to do necessarily. We want to have power over that. And in this project, you'll learn, part of this is learning how to nurture your team's culture of accountability. And part of that is giving healthy power. So this can make huge waves in your team, and it has for our past participants. And actually, it's pretty fun to do roles and scopes. It may not sound, you don't know what you're missing yet. It's really fun, actually. One of my favorite things. And the last thing is introducing and onboarding a new team. So listen, it can also be hard to get others on board to make organizational changes, right? It's hard to get someone to even just try something new in our teams. We're stuck in what we know. And you can have the perfect practice or idea, but you also need to know how to share those benefits and introduce it to them so that they listen, so they're willing to just try it. You don't have to be committed to it forever, but getting your team to be willing to just try it is a real skill. So you'll have the opportunity to practice that and get feedback from the instructors and the rest of your cohort. So those are the 5 main projects, and there's homework along all of those that helps you get there. It's very tangible within what's happening in your life right now, whatever team that might be, whether you're in a cooperative, whether you're in a nonprofit, a small business, a collective that isn't formally organized. That's who we work with, those leaders that are building collaborative leadership. And so I want to now take you to our website so that people asked earlier on the chat box about getting more information about the program. So I'm going to point some things out and then also show you how you would get there. So let me move your faces from not on top of my screen here. And so this is our home page. And so when you are here, make this a little bigger, you'll see a menu. And an easy way to get there, so it's brownskysolutions.com. An easy way to get there is just go to apply today. We made it real easy. And the link up here, you won't see this black bar. This is my login, but the link up here is roundskySolutions.com/CLCP1. CLCP stands for Collaborative Leadership Certification Program, and this is level 1. In case you're curious about that, let's see if my mouse will participate. So we have some information on top, just like the main logistics here. Applications are due next Thursday. You all, one way or another, found out about this info call, which is that link. And you get some more information about some of our theories and the dreams and philosophies of the program. So you can go ahead and read that if you'd like. I'll scroll down. There's some more of that about just this thing about you must figure out how to even the workload and prioritize burnout, confusion, and resentment. I think that so many of our leaders are experiencing that, and they want to get through that. They really care about their work. So if that speaks to you, this program is for you. There's some benefits here that you can read over, and we'll go over some of them later. And we have some of our previous students have shared how they've used it, so you can read through them. Noemi's here, Francis, Mike Crowley. Go ahead and read them if you'd like. There's quite a few. And then you can read here about what's included, who's this for, which we'll continue to go into that. And then right here is really where you can get into some more of those specific details. If you're one of those people who likes to research all the things about a program, this little plus sign right here is what you'll click. And it opens up into this great session by session, all the main learning points here. So in the first session, we have our orientation. We talk about the power matrix. Some of you may have heard of that in a workshop that we've done. The 7 conversations. And we get into facilitation. What are those real skills? And then the hard skills and the soft skills that you need. So you can go ahead and look through here when you're ready. There are 10 sessions. I'm not going to read over all this because it's a lot of information, and you may want to do that on your own. But you can find that on this page, and I'll just keep scrolling. And then there's some information about the onboarding process here. What's next? What do you do first? You press this plus sign. About some of the costs, which we'll go over later. But if you want to review, you can come here. And then down here is the application. It's pretty simple. It's at the very bottom of the page, and there are little buttons throughout the page that you can click if you just want to go directly down to that. But you'll enter your information. What do you hope to get out of it? And for those on the call that need or would like financial assistance, we have a question for that here. Just make sure you put that and say what's your situation? What can you give? And then we'll work with you. We have a scholarship budgeted for that, and then you hit down here, apply. It's not a super bright button, but it's very important. You hit that, and then if you want to know any of the instructors, you can get to know them a little bit more down here. So that's the page. If you have any questions, you can ask me if you'd like, and you can come back to this page. Those are some options for you. So with that, we're going to come back to our slideshow, and I think I'm going to pass it back to Cecile.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rebecca. And I'm just going to take a couple minutes to talk about what's included in the course because there's a number of components that we've included to support you in your learning journey. In particular, you'll get the CoLab instructional and manual and card deck, which is a resource of all the practices that you can come back to over and over again, combined with different examples and step-by-step instruction. You'll also get video recordings of all of the course content that you can watch over and over again as you try things out within your teams. We also have weekly live training calls with a certified instructor to get instruction and support with your particular collaborative leadership facilitation and the implementation of these practical tools in your team. You'll have a connection and learning within a community of mission-driven leaders like yourself through this small, specially designed cohort to deepen your learning and engagement of these collaborative practices. You'll also receive personalized feedback from your instructor on your leadership and facilitation. And you'll get practical templates and rich training in how to build a responsive, dynamic, collaborative team with individual authority, shared accountability, tasks and project tracking systems. You'll have access to our online course platform and forums where you can discuss your team's current challenges and receive feedback and support from the instructors and coaches and other level 1 students with yourself. And you'll get certified as a CoLab Level 1 facilitator to add to your resume, supporting your work as a professional. So definitely go to that website to learn a little bit more, Round Sky Solutions /CLCP1. And now I'll pass it back to Rebecca to talk about what you can expect to get from the training.
Great. Thanks, Cecile. That's a lot. Okay. So every time we go over this, I'm like, wow, you really get a lot in just 10 weeks. So I want to talk about, we have about 5 minutes, so I'll get through some of this, and we'll go a little bit over to take questions and we'll answer them if people have them. So don't worry about that if you have a burning question. So the work that you'll do in this training will really start to solve some of that overwhelm and shows up from those never-ending tasks and from those frustrating meetings and interactions. And I'm going to share with you what many of our students have experienced through engaging in this training over just 10 weeks. And this starting with intentional, grounded leadership. So through piecing together so much of what you've learned about healthy, powerful leadership in the past and through this program's projects, such as the thematic development project that I briefly mentioned earlier, but not in the projects, the personal development topic or the area of growth, and the practice of facilitation of the actual sessions, you'll see and feel real sustained progress in your personal development. You'll notice that you're more grounded than you usually are when things are not lining up the way you'd like them to. You'll just notice, whoa, I'm actually more grounded than I thought I would be right now, than I have been in the past. And that will happen. Some of our students have mentioned feeling that way. And the instructors have a great way of asking those important questions for opening up new areas of leadership growth. So wherever you're at, you're going to be met there. And another one that's really important that we've touched upon is strengthening your collective decision-making processes and your ability to synthesize those ideas. So you'll have tools and tactics to become more effective and rapid without losing the importance of inclusivity. Sometimes one of the things that people have felt is that it slows you down, but we found that actually, if you do it right, if you have a collaborative process that really serves you, it makes it quicker than having to pick up any of the burned feelings that come up with hierarchy, right? So you really get everyone on board quickly, and you have time to practice this process in the sessions and really get to know it deeply. And then one of the biggest things that people say is, or that our students have noticed, is that their meetings are just better. And no one likes to talk about meetings. Many people hate them. There's lots of jokes about meetings. So being able to facilitate better meetings that are truly collaborative is pretty huge. So who hasn't been in a poorly facilitated meeting? I can think of so many on the top of my head. So you'll receive both the tools, the practice, and the individualized support to help you through the struggles that are happening in your meetings, really pinpointing what's happening, why, and getting the right tactics. And it might not even be a team that uses these practices. You'll still have some theory and ways to bring it in, real tactics that you can bring into any meeting situation. So the next one is getting workable accountability, and this helps you to really build that culture of accountability for yourself as an individual and how to integrate it into your team. Our students often are saying that the training has been really effective for taking over that sense of overwhelm. I know I've said that a few times, but it's been something that comes up often, and you get started on it right away. It's not in 10 weeks you'll see that. You start it as you start the training. You get each week you really get into these things, and you'll see these skills being applicable in situations over and over and over again, which is pretty incredible, I think. it's happening at work, it's happening in your relationships, these skills really come up. This ability to listen and be collaborative is really important for our world. So I'm going to move us on. So some of the logistics. So the cohorts are put into small groups of 3 to 7 for 10 weeks that meet completely online. So wherever you are, via Zoom, what we're on now, a video conferencing platform for 2 hours a week. And in addition to those instruction calls, you'll have the opportunity to facilitate and to receive coaching and personalized feedback. And in between each session, you'll have a course platform to interact with. So you'll have your homework there and all the important details, and you'll have forms as well. And you can expect to spend about 3 to 5 hours a week on this, including the 2-hour sessions, depending on how much time you put in and what you're hoping to, how much time you have in your schedule. Where does it fit on your sticky note, concentric circle? And then you'll also we have a rigorous certification exam, which enables you to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about, that you know all the key components, and we'll support you through that. If you don't pass the first one, we want you to pass. That's important to us. So we'll make sure that you have that knowledge. And we're launching the course the week of October 7th, so in about a month. And the application deadline is next week, September 13th. And the schedule, I'm sure many of you are wondering, the schedule is based on the cohort's availability. So once you are accepted through the interview process will talk about what's your schedule look like, and you'll fill out a doodle. And that's how that works. And the cost is $2,500, and we do accept payment plans. We have scholarship funding if that price is not available to you. If you're a Vermont resident, I saw a lot of Vermonters in here, you may qualify for VSAC funding, which is for low-income Vermonters. So please email us. We can send you those details. You may get a full scholarship. And we also have a referral policy. So there are ways to make this work if this is something that you want to do. So with that, I'd like to open up to any questions that have come up for people. You can put them in the chat box. You can open up your mic if you'd like and just go ahead and ask it out loud. It's nice to hear from people. So the floor is open for that. And while you think of your questions, feel free to type it in. We do have one that people bring up often, and someone emailed me, is what if I'm not a part of any teams? Or what if I don't have a chance to practice with the team I'm with? But they don't maybe want to do it yet. Cecile, can you answer that? Speak to that question?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I would say is that we're here to help support you in your process of introducing this to your team. And most of the students have been able to use the teams that they're on, whether those are paid employment or volunteer. Often, even a volunteer group can really benefit from this type of knowledge and process. So we'll help you find the appropriate place and get you to be able to use these tools with even if it's a small team, even if it's only one other person. It's really about practicing and being able to explore how these work in action with other folks. So we'll support you through that process, and there's a wide range of options for what constitutes a team, not just paid employment.
Great. Thanks, Cecile. I think I'm not sure if you mentioned this just now, but at one point someone used their family even as the space, their home environment as their team.
Exactly. So yeah.
We're very creative with how that works. Anybody else have questions that have come up through this call? Any question that wasn't answered for you? Okay, there's, I do have another question on here that has come up before that maybe you're feeling, and it's kind of along the same lines, so maybe we'll just speak to it a little bit more, Cecile, is what if no one else on my team wants to do this? Is this helpful for me to even be there?
Yeah, that's a great question, and absolutely, this knowledge has essentially two tracks to it. One is your own personal development as a leader, and the other is these team practices, which are really helpful at essentially training a whole team. And so whether or not you're able to use it with a particular team that you thought you would, there will be more opportunities in your life. Even small, short things. This is really helpful with, for example, I've used it for planning family gatherings. If any of you have been through that process with your family, it can be so chaotic and frustrating, and so many feelings can come up. But streamlining that process of planning it with these tools has really made a huge difference in terms of the outcomes and frankly how people feel about each other. So there's a wide range of place that you can apply these tools and practices in terms of the team environment, and of course what you learn for yourself you will take with you beyond this course.
Yeah, that's so true. It's very, the ways that it's showed up in my life are pretty incredible. I think these skills are just important life skills in some ways, but and knowing how to apply them is really important. Thanks, Cecile. So I'll just take a few more seconds. If anyone else has another question that they want to share, you can also email me, Rebecca@roundskysolutions.com. If you have any questions. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Charlotte and Jan, for taking the time to share your experiences. It's been really wonderful to be on the call with you all. Really appreciate your time. And we'll see you soon. Feel free to open your mics and say goodbye if you'd like.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.